secured the area, and I've retained order, like I always do. Everybody chill! It's cool now.
Come on, do a beautiful show. It's gonna be awesome.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to yet another episode of It's Always Stockholm in Los Angeles. My name is Nate Harold, and I am here by myself. Will Noon is in Mexico paying to... or something like that. Anyways, think of me as a lower IQ, less interesting, Dan Carlin. I think that's the only podcast I can think of that I listen to that has one host, no guest. It's very brave. I feel very weird. But so we're just going to go through this episode. Let's see. Today we are talking about Season 6, Episode 7 of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, Who Got Dee Pregnant? Written by Charlie Day and Rob McElhenney, directed by Randall Einhorn. This opening scene easily could be its own episode, and it's kind of interesting that it hasn't been, since they kind of like alluded to Lethal Weapon 5, and then Lethal Weapon 5 became real, or maybe that was at the same time as they were like filming that season. I don't remember. Anyways, Night at the Museum, Philly style, would have been great. Hopefully, we still got 3 seasons left on this contract. Maybe it'll happen. The conversation about the chalk and erasers.
I think we should get some chalk and some erasers, because that dust cloud, really shows the laser beam alarms.
Oh, get a little dust cloud going.
There's some great Dennis and Dee banter. Dennis claiming that she's fat.
It's certainly going to be a lot better than sticking around the bar all night watching you eat sandwich after sandwich after sandwich.
And Dee says she's pregnant, and...
I feel like you say that all the time now.
You better do yourself a favor and flush it out.
Wait a second. You've definitely said that before. You're right.
There's several references like this to Season 5, I believe, Episode 1. The gang exploits the mortgage crisis. Always nice to see Sunny being meta and going up its own butt. I appreciate that kind of thing. I can understand how people maybe think that's a crutch, but Dee really slams one home with the...
Well, you should give a shit, because one of you is the father.
What?
What the hell are you talking about?
I'm talking about the Halloween party, where one of you got me pregnant.
She really goes out on a high note, so to speak.
You guys are on your way to a museum to spend the night. Hey, have a great time, guys.
The alliances in this episode, are there alliances in this episode?
I assume so, but I don't know.
That is the first you've heard from the Willbot 3000. He will be peppered in here and there if I have time to edit that in. And let's do a quick recap if you haven't seen this episode in a while. It's a bit of a recap episode. It's various members of the gang recounting their experiences from a Halloween party. All of them are different, obviously, and to great comedic effect. They're all trying to figure out who got Dee pregnant, as the title suggests, because, as previously stated, she drops that bomb on the male members of the gang in the opening scene. We get a little Artemis, get a little McPoyle. Essentially, the guys are just mashing their browns together, as Dennis says, to solve the mystery of who got Dee pregnant. And that's it.
Right.
So now I am just going to touch on some highlights, some important bits from this episode, Who Got Dee Pregnant. First, I'm going to give Mac props for the invention, quote unquote, of the term browning out.
I don't even remember that party. I was wasted.
Yeah, me too. I browned out that evening.
Browned out? What's browned out?
Oh, it's when you drink so much that everything goes brown. It's not as severe as a blackout, because I remember bits and pieces. I like to call it browning out.
I love that Dennis is very, very proud of Mac.
There's a good reason for that, Frank, because I think Mac just made it up on the spot.
I did.
You did. That's a great term, browning out.
You like it?
I love it.
Thank you.
Mac, in turn, if you've watched the show, he thrives on Dennis approving of Mac. But then Dennis quickly shifts back into Dennis mode, where he's just basically overusing it. He's going to take it for his own.
Try and figure out which one of you two banged my sister.
Okay, but let's not overuse the brown thing right in the beginning,
The gang all agree that it's basically, once a phrase like that takes off, then it's just public domain.
Here's the thing. Once you throw a term like that out and everybody likes it, it's pretty much fair game. We can
It's
use it wherever
public
we want.
domain at that
It becomes
point.
public domain.
Now we're
As any seasoned drinker, myself included, former drinker, will tell you that the browning out thing is pretty spot on. I would say as your drinking continues, as maybe it gets worse over time, the browning out is replaced pretty much exclusively by the blacking out. But browning out is something that I think a lot of people who have drank in the past or drink can relate to. Will, you've never mentioned it on this podcast. Do you drink?
Not really.
Oh, interesting. Okay. You haven't made that clear yet. There's a lot of good uses of browning out used in this scene. Dennis thinks that everyone should mash their browns together to try to figure out who banged his sister. But the best, and I'll put in the quote here, is...
So here's what I remember from my brown state.
There's just something about the way that Dennis is getting creative with it and overusing it, and Mac's disapproval from the other side of the bar is really enjoyable to me. The second point I would like to discuss is Mac bailing on the Mario Luigi costume. Dennis points out that...
Bro, we agreed on funny over sexy this year so we could disarm the ladies? You don't remember this conversation? Without my Mario, what am I? I'm just like some weird Italian plumber. I look like an asshole.
And Mario and Luigi is just like a very cliche, overused Halloween duo. What do you think of Mario and Luigi as video game characters?
They both seem pretty aggressive.
Oh, that's interesting. Because they just kind of like jump around and like land on mushrooms and stuff like that. But I mean, you're entitled to your opinion. Anyways, Mac comes as...
I'm that character from Lord of the Rings, Viggo Morgenstein.
Which Dennis correctly points out that is not the character's name, and that's also not the person's name. But that got me thinking about Aragorn and the Lord of the Rings, because I had just seen this on Twitter a couple weeks ago. This woman found a letter that her mother wrote to Tolkien, and apparently he replied to her because she wrote it in Elvish, or she turned English words into Elvish letters. I forget exactly what it was. So Tolkien replied to her. In the letter, they were talking about beards in the Middle-earth world, Lord of the Rings universe. And apparently, Aragorn does not have a beard, which I cannot imagine Viggo, Aragorn, in Lord of the Rings not having a beard. I say this as a straight white man, and I think I speak for a lot of straight white men in that there's something that's very appealing and attractive to Aragorn. Maybe we all wish we were a little more like Aragorn. Maybe we're just attracted to him in some sense.
What do you want?
A little more caution from you. That is no trinket you carry.
I carry nothing.
Indeed. I can avoid being seen if I wish, but to disappear entirely, that is a rare gift.
Viggo's such a great actor. Half Dane, half American, raised in Argentina, stud of an actor. But I just can't see Aragorn getting the, Justice League treatment where they digitally erased Henry Cavill's mustache because he was in Mission Impossible. Anyways, that's hilarious and a different story altogether. Mac/Viggo's courage and heart when he steps up to become the hero, which we later learned that he actually just punched out an innocent woman who was not the waitress either. Charlie getting the Phantom of the Opera and vampires mixed up is a great bit.
You are dressed like the Phantom of the Opera. He's not a vampire.
He eats theater people.
Does he eat theater people? I don't think so. I think that's the only musical I've ever seen in person. And when I was a child, my parents dragged me to the Phantom of the Opera, and I don't remember much about it other than like the chandelier falling down at the beginning. But Charlie doing the the Dracula thing.
I want to suck your blood!
And there's some great back and forth with the gang. Charlie doesn't know who he is.
And I'm surprised you even know who the Phantom of the Opera is.
He might not.
He doesn't.
No, I don't.
Anyways, I guess all of the gang's costumes are great. Luigi being just Luigi by himself is great because it's not Mario also, so it's like double jeopardy, I think is the correct use of that. And of course I have to mention Frank being Spider-Man at the beginning and then changing to Man-Spider.
First of all, don't say I went as Spider-Man. I didn't go as Spider-Man. I was Man-Spider. All right? Totally different.
which is totally different, as he points out. I don't know if that was like a thing they had to be careful about with Marvel, or whether that was just a pure comedic decision. But Frank's costume, when he's both Spider-Man and Man-Spider, are incredible. The next important bit I would like to talk about is Artemis. We got a little cameo from Artemis last week with the voicemail. This time we get Artemis in the flesh. She has one of the best lines of the episode when she comes in and says,
I don't remember that night.
I didn't tell you which night yet.
I don't remember most evenings.
She has maybe the second best line of the episode.
I'm talking about the sounds of hot, passionate lovemaking that was coming from the bathroom that I had heard with my own 2 earballs.
This is also a good point to bring up that Dee's costume is consistently evolving through each person's version of the story. She starts out pretty normal. She gets feathers. She gets a beak and feathers. She turns into an ostrich with the voice of Caitlin Olsen.
What is that supposed to mean? Okay, you know what? Shoot.
And then by the end, we see her as she really was, which was just super drunk, like lipstick smeared, verbally assaulting the peacock lady.
What are you talking about? Me, mine. This is mine now. Switch it.
I don't think so.
Oh, I don't think so. I didn't ask you, okay?
The next point I would like to talk about is the appearance of the McPoyles. Recurring characters, we don't see them that often. It's nice to see them. We have Liam, played by Jimmy Simpson, and Ryan, played by Nate Mooney. As we've talked about before in this podcast, Jimmy Simpson and Charlie Day were buddies back in their early acting days in New York City. And I don't know if anyone has seen the bloopers of this season, but there are some amazing bloopers of Liam, Jimmy Simpson, telling Mac that he should call Margaret.
She's still expecting a call.
Well, she's not gonna get one, right?
You will call her!
Okay, dude, Jesus, I'll call her and calm down. I'm not gonna call her, all right? So
You will call her!
okay, well, she's not gonna get one, all right?
You will call her!
It's great that the McPoyles are kind of like the last resort, because everyone has them in their recalling of the evening, and everyone has them drinking milk. Therefore, and therein, they were stone cold sober.
Well, the only consistent part about every single one of these stories is that the McPoyles were there and they were drinking milk, which means they were stone cold sober that night. They could probably confirm the truth.
There's some pretty gross McPoyle stuff when they arrive on Dennis being the dad.
Oh shit, I'm gonna be sick. Go, do it. Oh, feel it, let it out.
Let's just get out of here.
Don't flush.
And the last point I would like to bring up about this episode is that the last scene is great because Dennis is super sick because he thinks he's the dad, and there's just some great Glenn Howerton acting in the hallway of Dee's apartment.
I had sex with you. It was sex with me. It was sex with me.
He threw up the whole way over here, D.
So it is agreed upon that Dennis and Dee went into the back office on Halloween when they were both super drunk. Dennis definitely thought that Dee was the peacock lady. Dee definitely thought that Dennis was Charlie. That's never disputed. But Dee is so confident that nothing happened. I don't know. It's not pleasant to think about, but it's also like we didn't really get an explanation of any kind as to what was going on in the office. I don't know. I thought that was a little weird. I thought it was left a little bit too open, but I mean, we also know, having watched the series, spoilers, that Dee is just carrying it for another couple, and none of them are the father. Like, that part is true. I just thought it was interesting that nothing was really like finalized or disproven thoroughly. This is a very short episode. It's also very weird recording it by yourself. Anyways, I would give this episode, I guess, an A. I remember going into this thinking that this was one of the all-timers, the really great ones. But I don't know, there's something about it that it's maybe not as good as I thought it was, or I remembered, because on repeated viewings, I don't know, I love the McPoyles, I love Artemis, I love all the drunk acting, all that's great. It just doesn't have the A+ quality that I was thinking that it did, so I'm giving it an A, close enough. So that's it. So maybe next time Will be back, maybe not, who knows. This was a learning experience for me. Thanks for joining me. See you next time.
The phantom of the opera is there inside your mind.
Brought to you by the Natty and Noon Network.